Hi, it's Katrina. There are so many things that we still don't understand, and our natural curiosity just keeps us wanting to know more and more and more. These unsolved mysteries could rewrite our entire history and change what we thought we knew about the past. If that sounds good, then hit that subscribe button and let's go. Gods from outer space. Why do so many people think the Sumerians worshipped aliens from outer space? Why are ancient alien enthusiasts so obsessed with the Anunnaki? That's because author Zecharia Sitchin may have royally messed up some translations of Sumerian texts. Sitchin taught himself Sumerian cuneiform and loved archaeology. He also was a huge believer that extraterrestrials played a significant role in human history. Sitchin was a huge fan of the alien beings known as Anunnaki, who mixed their DNA with humans to create slaves to mine gold for them. In the 1970s, he got his hands on some ancient Sumerian tablets from Syria dating back to 7600 BC. And from there, the rest is sci-fi history. Back in the day, there were very few people who could understand and translate ancient Sumerian and Assyrian artifacts. But now the translations are much more accessible to people, even if you aren't an expert, and many people can read and translate them directly. There are a number of ancient seals that Sitchin said were proof of the Anunnaki. He claimed that the seals depicted these otherworldly beings and told the story of them coming to Earth. While his theories do have a lot of supporters, it turns out that his translations of these seals may be way off base. So if they don't describe alien overlords, what do they describe? That's where Sarah Farmer and Jason Jarrell come in. They believe that the seals, translated by Sitchin, were actually talismans that were meant to encourage the ancient Sumerians to do good and to reflect on their gods. Nothing more, nothing less. In fact, there is no reference to Anunnaki anywhere. The closest thing is the Anuna, which means gods or deities, just like the gods from the Greek or Roman pantheon. Farmer and Jarrell carefully examined the seals that Sitchin looked at and came to the conclusion that they are basically good luck charms. According to them, they are in no way associated with space travel or the Anunnaki. You can think of them as the cross or the Jewish star that so many people wear as jewelry. But is what they claim true? Well, let's find out. Let's take a look at this image of the first millennium Sumerian cylinder seal. Surrounding two human-like figures are several bizarre symbols. The giant star-like symbol in particular has been identified as the Sumerian sign of kingship. Then, next to the sign of kingship on the right, there are two pronounced figures. It's believed these figures represent the gods Enki and Enlil. The god Enki on the left, who looks like he's rocking a fish-shaped robe, was the god of water, knowledge, and creation. Enlil on the right seems to be sporting a mullet before it was cool, although it's probably some sort of helmet. Enlil was a god associated with air, wind, earth, and storms. It's normal in almost every religion to find physical representations of gods. But it's easy to see why Sitchin assumed that this seal was referencing aliens. Sitchin believed that the gods Enki and Enlil were great leaders of the Anunnaki. Between them, floating in the air, is what looks like a flying craft. It's hovering, and there even appears to be smaller humanoid figures riding inside of it. To Sitchin, this is irrefutable proof that these beings came from the cosmos in spaceships. After all, it would have been impossible for the ancient human Sumerians to have technology capable of flight, but they drew a flying craft in one of their seals. And let me ask you a question. Can you imagine something that you've never heard of before? Can you describe a color that nobody has ever seen? It's impossible. So this is why Sitchin believes that the Sumerians must have witnessed this technology to be able to recreate it in these seals. Many other historians and experts don't agree though. Sitchin was an amateur, and even though he was interested in ancient history, he didn't really know what he was talking about. Instead of flying craft, they believe that it's just an oracle. In this context, the oracle would be a place where the ancient Sumerians would consult their gods. It's sort of like a modern-day church. But if that's the case, why is it hovering in midair? For leading scholars and researchers in the field, Sitchin saw what he wanted to see to write his books and create an entire world of his own creation. It's more likely that the seal is referencing gods, and so the Sumerians placed the oracle in the heavens. Since it is an artistic scene on an ancient artifact, it's open to interpretation, and so we keep coming back to it because it continues to fascinate. Headless Winged Deity. A monumental sculpture of an Assyrian winged deity was recently excavated at the ancient city of Khursabad in Iraq. This deity, known as the Lamassu, is typically depicted with a human-like head with the body of a lion or a bull and wings like a bird. But the statue, which otherwise seems perfectly intact, is missing an important piece: the head, although it's not really missing. The sculpture dates back to 721 BC, when it was commissioned by King Sargon II. It once stood guard in front of Khursabad 2,700 years ago, but for 3 decades it was buried and forgotten. It was originally discovered in 1992 by an archaeological team from Iraq at the city's 6th gate. However, not long after, in 1995, the head was stolen right off this thing. It was likely the easiest thing to steal, considering the rest of its body is ginormous. They probably wouldn't have gotten very far with the entire statue on the bed of their truck, so they settled for just a small piece of the sculpture. Thankfully, though, the head was later recovered and stored in the Iraqi museum, where it's now safe from looters and black market dealers, in theory. After the head was safe, the rest of the statue was reburied in order to protect it from destruction. The Gulf War caused chaos in the region, and ISIS did even more damage in 2015. The re-excavation of the statue took place in 2023, just recently, completed by a joint French-Iraqi mission led by Professor Dr. Ahmed Fakak al-Badrani. The team was thrilled to find the statue still in one piece, minus the head, of course. The Lamassu sculpture, made of alabaster, weighs an impressive 19 tons. It stands 12.5 feet tall and has gained international attention. French archaeologist Pascal Butterlin said that this baby was the biggest thing he'd ever uncovered. According to him, statues this big aren't usually found in Iraq. They're typically unearthed in places like Cambodia or Egypt. Lamassus are legendary figures from Assyrian mythology that were often made in the form of statues to guard the entrances of palaces and major cities. They were thought to ward off evil and protect cities from external threats. But beyond that, the artistry of Lamassu statues demonstrates the sophisticated craftsmanship of the ancient Assyrians. They were intricately carved with detailed features that created a unique perspective when viewed from different angles. From the front, these things appeared stationary, but from the side, they appeared to be in motion. How in the world did they do that? Somehow, these ancient people were able to create incredible sculptures that defy explanation even today. The Lamassu statue that was recently excavated is just one example of their achievements. I'd like to see modern artists try and recreate this thing. They might be able to do it, but only with the help of modern technology, which the Assyrians didn't have access to. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Robert Klopstein and Christian Monserrate for supporting this channel. Thanks, guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Linear A and B. Archaeologists had a mystery on their hands in 1886 with the discovery of pottery fragments on Crete. They were covered in a cryptic written text, which, to this day, has yet to be translated. It's now nearly 150 years later, and nobody has any clue how to read the inscriptions, which is now known as Cretan Minoan Linear A. The fragments of pottery were discovered by British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans. He was an expert on Aegean civilizations of the Late Bronze Age. 13 years after his initial discovery in 1899, he found even more mysterious examples of Linear A at the Palace of Knossos. I mean, look at this text and tell me you're not confused. No wonder we haven't made any sense of it in 100 years. Evans found that the writing system was distinctly different from the hieroglyphics used in ancient Egypt. It was also not at all similar to the wedge-shaped writing of Mesopotamia. Instead, this confusing script belonged to a linear system of writing, linked to the Minoan civilization that lived on Crete from about 1800 to 1450 BC. Evans also uncovered another script called Linear B, which was easily deciphered in the 1950s. Linear B was an early form of Greek that was used to write the Mycenaean language. But if they could translate Linear B, why has Linear A proven so difficult to understand? It's not for want of trying. Many people have tried and failed. But by comparing Linear A script to Linear B, which popped up in the archaeological record around 1400 BC, the texts are likely accounting figures, along with other record-keeping information. This assumption is only logical. It's based on the fact that Minoan palaces on Crete likely acted as redistribution and storage centers for foods like wheat and barley. But why the people of Crete decided to use such a different form of record-keeping than everyone else in the ancient world is a mystery. However, thanks to some dedicated researchers, we may be getting close to figuring it out. Dr. Esther Salgarella from the University of Cambridge is combining paleography, linguistic studies, and archaeology to put together an online database of Linear A signs. It's the closest thing Minoan scholars have to a key for unlocking the Linear A script, similar to the Rosetta Stone. Thanks to Salgarella's database, comprising 3,000 individual signs and 400 handwritten inscriptions, researchers have found that the connection between the Linear A and B scripts is more subtle than researchers ever thought. The language between the two scripts are different, but the graphic systems hardly changed. So what does that mean? Well, it means there's hope. With Salgarella's database available online for anyone to try and decipher the script, we could be very close to solving the mystery. And remember, now we have AI. Life on Mars? If you're a big sci-fi fan, you're going to love this. Mars, one of Earth's closest neighbors, may have a secret buried beneath its barren landscape. It's long been debated whether or not the red planet once held life. Countless movies have depicted advanced extraterrestrial beings coming from Mars to destroy our precious blue marble. And why do you think that is? Could there be any truth to these Hollywood blockbusters? Throughout the last 50 years, several missions to Mars have sought to answer that very question. Initial images from NASA's Curiosity rover, which has been exploring the planet for nearly 12 years, weren't exactly promising. The images showed nothing but what appears to be sand, hills, rocks, and more sand. When researchers search for evidence of life, water is usually the first thing they look for. And that's because every form of terrestrial life form that we know of requires water to exist. Mars doesn't have oceans like we do on Earth, but that doesn't mean that water can't be found on the planet. Today, Mars is barren and dry, with the majority of its water trapped in the polar ice caps. The thin atmosphere around the planet allows radiation from the sun to scorch the surface, making it difficult to believe that anything could live in such brutal conditions. But has it always been that way? In 2000, NASA's Mars Global Surveyor sent back images of gullies on Mars that seemed to have been shaped by flowing water. And there it was, proof that at one point, the red planet wasn't just a desolate wasteland. There could have been vast oceans in the past, where bacteria or even marine creatures could have lived. One estimate suggests that as much as 19% of the planet's surface could have been covered by an ancient ocean. But it's possible that liquid water can still be found on Mars, either in the shadows on the surface, where temperatures would be colder, or beneath the ground. And that really makes you think. If life did exist on the planet in the past, could it still exist today? In Earth's ancient history, people lived in vast underground cities. They were like anthills for humans. Some people could have lived their whole lives underground without ever feeling the sun on their faces. It may not be likely, but it sure is possible. Turkey, for example, has over 200 of these cities beneath the Anatolian plains, like Derinkuyu, some of which were 3 or more levels deep. So, following that train of thought, it could be possible that ancient inhabitants of Mars simply went underground when things got a little too hot. But what other evidence besides water could there be of habitation on the red planet? Well, actually there's a lot, but NASA won't admit it. I mean, it's not direct proof of life, but a lot of people are going crazy online over these pictures. Take a look at this picture and tell me what you see. That definitely looks like a doorway. You can see where the dirt and sand around it were cut, revealing the layers underneath. And look inside the doorway, where the walls appear to be perfectly smooth, aside from some cracks. Maybe this doorway leads to an underground city full of Martians. NASA, however, claims that this is nothing but your eyes playing tricks on you. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. Now get a load of this. The Curiosity rover snapped an image of what seems to be a statue or a sculpture, looking like a straight-up Sasquatch. It even looks like it's sitting on top of a carved pillar. The figure appears to be kneeling and has one of its arms stretched outward. This could just be a strange-shaped rock formed over hundreds of years by erosion. But what do you think? Now take a look at this last image. Mostly buried beneath the sand, just peeking out, seems to be a pyramid. Its near-perfect design and shape point to it being created by an intelligent being. And given the fact that pyramids are found all over the place on Earth, this one is a real head-scratcher. Again, it could be nothing but a coincidental rock formation, as NASA claims. But what if the architects of pyramids on Earth got the idea from somewhere else? Maybe Martians? Maybe the gods of our ancient ancestors were nothing but beings from Mars, making their rounds in the solar system. And maybe, just maybe, they shared knowledge with us in the past, like how to build structures that would last forever. Another theory could be that Earth is just a seed planet, and that we really come from Mars. Maybe those ancient gods weren't aliens at all. Maybe they were our cosmic brothers and sisters, checking in on us, helping us develop civilization as they once did on the Red Planet. What do you think about all of these theories about Mars? Let me know in the comments below. Iron Age warrior survives spinal injury. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was an Iron Age warrior in central Kazakhstan. This brave fellow was not your average Joe. He stood tall at 5 feet 7 inches, towering over his peers who were usually around 5 feet 4. But his tale takes a twist when he faces a perilous encounter with a bronze arrowhead. The arrowhead, measuring a whopping 2.2 inches long, found its way into one of the warrior's vertebrae, causing a wound that should have been fatal. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Instead of meeting his demise, the warrior's body did something miraculous. It healed around the metal point. You heard that right. Against all odds, this warrior survived long enough for his bone to mend itself around the arrowhead, sealing it in like a precious jewel. Experts were amazed at this incredible feat. Injuries like that usually meant certain death back in those days. So how in the world did he survive? The mystery doesn't end here. As archaeologists dug deeper, they discovered that this warrior likely belonged to the powerful Scythians. And he wasn't just any old Scythian. He was likely part of the elite class, given how majestic his burial mound was. Researchers took it a step further and looked at the warrior's diet. Whoever he was, he had a taste for millet, a grain that wasn't very common among his people. Perhaps he dined like a king before his death, or maybe millet was a delicacy reserved for the high and mighty. The truth is unknown. Maybe it was the millet that healed this guy, or maybe he was just lucky. Or perhaps they had healing techniques that we aren't even aware of. Khat Shabib. Have you ever heard of the Khat Shabib wall? No, it's not a medieval fortress from a fairy tale. It's a real wall, almost 100 miles long, made of stone that is snaking its way through southern Jordan. It's been puzzling archaeologists and historians for ages, leaving them baffled over who built it, why, and when. Back in 1948, a British ambassador to Jordan named Sir Alec Kirkbride spotted this colossal stone structure cutting through the landscape. It's now in ruins, but when it was first built, it would have been a sight to behold. Locals called it Khat Shabib, meaning Shabib's wall. However, it's not just one long wall. There are sections where 2 walls run side by side, and others where it splits off into branches. So why would the architects of this thing build it in such a confusing way? I'll give you some theories later on. The wall once stood over 3 feet tall. It also has around 100 towers that were built alongside it, standing anywhere from 6 to 12 feet high. Another big question that researchers can't figure out is when this wall was built. Some estimates put it at 2,000 years old, but recent dating techniques suggest that it's much older, prehistoric even. Given its connection to other structures nearby, Sir Alec and others after him assumed that the wall dated to Roman times. There are several Roman border fortresses in the area, so you can see where they got that idea from. But for all anyone knows, this thing could predate the pyramids in Egypt. Scholars have tossed around ideas about its purpose, from being a hideout for hunters to a lookout spot, but right now nothing is certain. Imagine hauling massive stones to build a wall stretching almost 100 miles. Talk about a workout. There must have been a reason for doing it, but we just don't know what it was. The works of the old men. I know you've heard of the Nazca lines of Peru, but have you heard about the works of the old men in Saudi Arabia? Some estimates suggest that these geoglyphs could be around 7,000 years older than the Nazca lines, and they might be even more mysterious too. The geoglyphs of the Saudi Arabian desert are a spectacular sight from the air. They come in all shapes and sizes, with some looking like kites and others like wheels. But these ancient works of art raise several questions, like who made them and why. The local Bedouins have always known they were there, but they are so old. That's why they call them the works of the old men, because they are so ancient. Just to give you some perspective, the works of the old men cover a larger area than the Nazca lines, and they are a lot older. The geoglyphs in Peru were made sometime between 400 and 650 AD, but these more ancient earthworks could date back to 7000 BC. Although this estimate is highly debated, most scholars place the geoglyphs as being no more than 3,000 to 5,000 years old. That's still really old. An excavation in the area could clear up any confusion, but no excavation has ever been set up yet. These massive earthworks were first spotted in 1927 by Flight Lieutenant Percy Maitland while flying over the Harat Asham lava field. Seeing these things on the ground must have been pretty shocking, considering how much they stand out in the otherwise barren landscape. His jaw must have been on the floor. Some of the wheel-shaped structures are fairly close together, while others are more in the middle of nowhere. Some are rectangular, some are round, but there is no clear pattern. Many of these circular glyphs contain two spokes that form a bar. The bar seems to point in the direction where the sun rises and sets. Others, however, have spokes that don't have any clear astronomical meaning that we know of. The kite structures are sometimes found underneath the wheels, suggesting that they were put there before the idea for the wheels was ever conceived. Some researchers think the wheels could have been associated with rituals or astronomical events, or maybe they had something to do with the seasons. Nobody really knows. One belief regarding the kite-like structures is that they could have been used as part of an ancient system of hunting. Before they crumbled into dust, leaving only their outline in the dirt, these kites could have been stone walls. The design of these structures would form a wide open area, then funnel into a more narrow area, which some have called the killing floor. This design would make it fairly easy for ancient people to hunt animals. The idea is that ancient hunters would corral a herd of animals and rush them into these enclosures. Then they would funnel into the narrower sections where the hunters could easily pick out which one they wanted for dinner. This is just a theory, but it makes a lot of sense. There are over 2,000 of these kite structures across the deserts of Jordan, Syria, southern Israel, and Saudi Arabia. That means that if this hunting hypothesis is correct, it must have been widely used. These kites could be one of the reasons that migrating Persian gazelle are now extinct. These kite structures just worked a little too well. Dark matter. Dark matter is like the invisible ninja of the universe, making up more than 80% of all of the stuff out there, but nobody's ever laid eyes on it. Scientists think it exists because without it, the cosmos would be a chaotic mess. But what exactly is it? Well, dark matter is the ultimate hide-and-seek champion. It doesn't emit light or energy, so our gadgets can't pick it up. Scientists have been scratching their heads over this mystery for ages. There are two types of matter in the universe: regular matter, which we can see, and dark matter, which is as stealthy as a shadow. Regular matter is made up of tiny building blocks called baryons, like protons and neutrons. But dark matter? No one is sure. Some think it's made of baryons, while others think it's made of particles that we haven't even discovered yet. Imagine these mysterious particles as cosmic ghosts, floating around but hardly ever bumping into regular matter. Scientists have come up with cool names for them like WIMPs, neutralinos, and sterile neutrinos. But catching them is like trying to grab a handful of air, and observing them is a whole other matter. It literally can't be done. Scientists believe that dark matter is to blame for galaxies not behaving as they should. Some of them spin too fast, like cosmic race cars defying the laws of physics. Something invisible must be holding them together, and that's where dark matter comes in. But how do you hunt for something you can't see? It's like searching for a needle in a haystack while blindfolded. Scientists build giant detectors and bury them deep underground, hoping to catch a glimpse of dark matter's elusive dance. But so far, no luck. Despite all the evidence pointing to its existence, some rebel scientists think it's all a cosmic hoax. Maybe our understanding of gravity needs a tune-up, or maybe dark matter is just the ultimate prankster, hiding in plain sight while we chase our tails. Plant consciousness. Are plants alive? That's a silly question to ask. Of course they're alive, but just how alive are they? Well, according to a recent study, they are more conscious of their surroundings than previously thought. They sense when they are being touched, and they can even see colors. So, does that mean they have feelings as well? What you're about to hear might make you feel horrible about the way you have treated plants in the past. When you cut a beautiful rose from the bush, the stick that grows from the severed branch will have way more thorns than the previous one. That's just one example of how a plant can have a defense mechanism. Humans have defense mechanisms as well, although ours are a lot different than our plant friends. We have arms to catch ourselves when we fall, and we have feet to run away from danger. We are definitely conscious, but if plants react to the world around them in a similar way, but maybe in a different way given their circumstances, are they not also conscious? When you're conscious, you can think, feel, and perceive things happening both inside and outside of your body. Philosophers and scientists have been trying to understand consciousness for centuries. I know what you're thinking. How can plants be conscious if they don't have a brain? Well, that's a great question. Of course, plants don't have a brain as we would imagine. Instead, they have different systems and structures that help them respond to their environment. For example, plants have roots that seek out water and nutrients, leaves that turn towards sunlight, and hormones that help regulate growth and development. So together, these systems make up a sort of plant brain. It turns out plants know when they're being touched. It's kind of creepy to think about, but a study from Washington State University recently proved this when they conducted an experiment. While looking at 12 different plants under a microscope, the team slightly touched the skin of the plants with a small glass rod, roughly the size of a human hair. And guess what? The plant reacted. They didn't move, but they did respond by releasing a steady wave of calcium ions, which the team picked up using waves of light. It was as if the plants were saying, "I've been touched." Plants can also detect different types of light, like ultraviolet and infrared. An interesting plant is the Boquilla trifoliata, found in Chile and Argentina. It's special because it can change its leaf shape, size, color, and even vein patterns to look like the plant it's climbing on. It's like the chameleon of the plant world. Scientists think it does this to avoid being eaten by animals. Originally, they thought Boquilla could only mimic plants it grew on, but in 2021, a study showed that it can also mimic fake plastic plants. How does it do that if it's not that smart? Even though we're not sure exactly how Boquilla does this, it's a fascinating mystery waiting to be solved. Greek fire. Imagine it's the 7th century. The Byzantine Empire is locked in fierce battles on both land and sea. Just as they think they are getting the upper hand against their enemies, the Greeks unleash their secret weapon, Greek fire. Even though we are more technologically advanced than the Greeks ever were, we still have no clue how they made this weapon. They say it was a liquid so fierce that even water couldn't put out its flames. Some say it was like a fiery whirlwind that rained down on enemies' faces, leaving them scorched and defeated. Legend has it that Greek fire was cooked up by a clever chemist named Callinicus of Heliopolis. But even he kept the recipe under lock and key, swearing never to spill the beans on its secrets. The Byzantine emperor himself claimed it was a gift from the heavens, revealed by an angel to the great emperor Constantine. The Byzantines built a special kind of ship specifically to shoot Greek fire, and they could actually heat and prepare it on the water. They had enemies on all sides, including the Normans and the Turks, so they needed this weapon, and they couldn't let it fall into enemy hands. Despite countless attempts over the centuries, nobody has been able to crack the code and recreate Greek fire. It's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. The only account that gives a partial composition of the substance was written by the author of the Alexiad, the Byzantine princess Anna Komnene. Anna says the fire is made from the resin collected from pine and evergreen trees. She claims that the resin is rubbed with sulfur and then poured into tubes made of reeds. The Greek fire is then expelled by men who blow through the reeds like a musician blows through a clarinet. The tip of the reed tubes are set on fire, and as the substance catches the light, the weapon falls like a fiery whirlwind. But of course, when this recipe was tested, it didn't exactly work. So there must be something that we're still missing. Thanks for watching! Which of these unsolved mysteries do you think we're closest to solving? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and stick around for an older video you might have missed. Bye!